It's been reported that there has been, this is breaking news, that there's been a breakthrough in talks between the UK and the EU last night, ahead of the first bilateral summit since Brexit.
The Business Secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, joins us now from Westminster. Very good morning to you, Mr Reynolds. Right, those who voted to leave in 2016 think you have ignored democracy and we're about to sneak back into the EU. Is that what happened last night?
No, that's completely false, and I can confirm that a deal has been done. That's great news, but it's not about relitigating those arguments of the past. It's not about being a member of the EU or the single market or the customs union even. It is about removing some things, some unnecessary checks and frictions to trade and our security relationship with the European Union that we don't need. So it's about cheaper bills, it's about more secure borders, it's about jobs. To give you some specific examples of that, well, look, first of all, what we're seeking is if you are travelling to a European country, you can use the e-gates. It's easy to take your pet, so your life's going to be a little bit more straightforward. And particularly for my part of this, the trade side of it. Look, our trade with the European Union in goods has declined from where it should be following Brexit. On food and agriculture in particular, which is part of this agreement, we have a situation where, despite having the same rules in place, our trade with Europe, our exports are down by about a fifth. We've got the same standards in place. We've got a lot of unnecessary checks that add to cost, add to complexity. If you've got the same rules in place, you can remove those. And that is what we're trying to do. Make people better off, make the country more secure, not the arguments of the past, but trying to make that relationship as smooth and as easy as it should be, just as we're trying to do with the US or India or any other major market for the UK around the world.
Specifically about one issue that's getting lots of people agitated, and that's about youth mobility. Young people up to the age of, 29, are being allowed freedom of movement. A week on from the Prime Minister saying he was cracking down on immigration, we risked becoming an island of strangers. Are we going to have freedom of movement for those young people?
No, we're not. So there's going to be no return to freedom of movement. We will agree the parameters of how we might set up a scheme going forward. But look, we have already...
There's going to be youth mobility and no cap on numbers.
No, so that's not correct. So we have 13 youth mobility schemes already with other countries around the world. You still need a visa to come. It's time limited. It's capped. You can't bring dependents. You can't access social security. So it's something completely different to freedom of movement. Actually, you take those existing schemes we have, and they are negative on immigration. So more British young people leave for a short period of time than other people come to the UK. It's about 24,000 visas issued for youth mobility schemes last year. So immigration has got to come down. It's going to come down. That's through those changes announced last week. For instance, the skilled worker visa becoming a lot more restrictive. Real changes to the numbers, to be frank, that will come from that. Okay. This is relatively minor, but it's about opportunities for young people, and particularly for young people in the UK who want a little bit of time abroad early on in their lives.
Well, you're putting a very, very upbeat, positive spin on this deal. What a lot of people, particularly those who did vote to leave all those years ago, are concerned about is that actually this is just the first step in getting back into bed with the EU. And, of course, you don't get things without giving things in return in these deals. What have we given Europe? For example, have we given them too much access to UK fishing rights?
Well, look, good trade deals are a win-win, and no matter how you voted in that referendum, when you tell people that you can't sell a British sausage made in the UK in Europe, I think they think, why is that? That's ridiculous. So there are things that have been put in place that the previous deal didn't address, which we're addressing here.
What have we given the EU?
Well, I think that's a win-win. Look, on what we're seeking on food and agriculture, that works for the European Union as well, selling into us. On things like potential youth mobility, there's a win-win on both sides. So we shouldn't see trade deals as winners and losers, right? There are requests on both sides, but you get it right and both sides win. And particularly on food and agricultural trade or ease of going to and from countries, I think that is in both our interests and in the European Union's, and we should just work on that pragmatic basis and find out, not relive the arguments of the past, but how can we make our relationship as good as it can be in the same way we would with any other market around the world.
When will we see the detail of this deal? Later today?
You'll see it later today, yes.
What time?
In a few hours' time. It has to be go through a process on the European side, but the deal has been done, it has been agreed.
Is it an acknowledgement that Brexit has failed?
Well, it depends what you wanted from Brexit. I mean, if you wanted different things, you will feel differently about where we have got to with it.
But I do think Brexit's failed.
Well, I didn't vote for it, and I didn't know what people who were making promises of it thought they could deliver. But I do think it's better to look to the future. I do think no matter how you voted, you should want as seamless a travel for yourself and your family to Europe, or as ease a level of doing business and trade. And frankly, you want your bills to come down. I think everyone wants that across the UK.
Okay.
So removing those barriers at the border helps with that. Working on things like electricity trading helps with that. And look, I know people still feel strongly about it. Of course they do.
Well,
but looking to the future is the right
don't
way.
they, that their vote has not been respected when most people, or majority, voted for Brexit. But I want to just take the last.
Well, how?
couple
I mean,
of...
we've left.
Okay.
We've left the European Union. How have they been? I mean, it happened.
Because they feel
We
like you're
voted for
going
it.
back in. You're now striking deals with the EU, which effectively take us back in.
So how is allowing a British sausage to be sold in Europe turning our backs on Brexit? How is removing the fact you have to pay a £200 charge for an export health certificate if you're selling food into the European Union or agricultural products? How is removing that check and balance betraying it? I think most people who voted to leave have seen us leave, but they don't want to put unnecessary things in place that add to cost, add to complexity, see our trade come down. I don't think anyone was objecting to trading with Europe. It was about our involvement in the single market, in the customs union, which we're not revisiting.
I want to ask you about the post office scandal. Not only have we seen this mega ITV drama get millions of viewers, where everybody's heart was broken about the injustice done to the sub-postmasters and sub-postmistresses, but now we have the choir on Britain's Got Talent. Why aren't you paying out the full claims? They said to ask you, stop breaking your promises. I know it wasn't your government, but it is your government now.
Well, look, we haven't broken any promises. This is personally very important to me. I can tell you we have quadrupled the amount of compensation paid to victims of this horrendous scandal since the election. It's just short of £1 billion now that we've paid out. When claims come in, there are 4 different schemes, but we have policies in place to make an offer within 40 working days of that claim coming in.
It's 100% of these people's claims. They've all been forensically analysed. They don't understand why they're still waiting. That's the promise that has been broken.
I have to have a process by which the money is awarded. I'm in charge of public money. I can have policies in place to make sure we get compensation paid, that we respond quickly. But what I cannot do is personally set the level
is not quickly, Government Minister.
Exactly, 16 years.
Well, I think we've been in government 9 months and quadrupled compensation. It will never go fast enough for me, but that is a real increase in how we are responding.
It'll never go fast enough for them either, and some of them are dying before they receive their compensation. What do you make of Sir Alan Bates' suggestion to Susanna in an interview last week that the government just cuts through all this and appoints a Supremo, an Ubermeister, if you like, who has complete control and authority to speed things up?
Look, those structures already exist. The particular frustration Sir Alan has, who to me is a national hero, is about how quickly some of the claims and the most complex claims came into government and to the Post Office. He wanted a timeline for those. We asked the overall representatives of the victims of this scandal, and they were worried that might lead to a further injustice, because if people didn't get their claims in, they wouldn't be eligible, therefore, for compensation. But look, we've quadrupled it. We will always go faster. I don't set the individual level of claims. I would end up being judicially reviewed, frankly, for each of those claims. It would elongate the process. But I can promise you everything is being done to get money out the door, and that's why it's gone up so much since the election.
All right, Minister, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
No, hang on. Sorry, I have to, before we let you go. On Wednesday, the 23rd of April, the Legal Aid Agency became aware of a cyber attack. Were you aware of this? Because apparently they've had to take immediate action to bolster the security of the system, but they're working closely with the National Crime Agency, National Cyber Security Centre. They've informed the Information Commissioner. But on Friday, the 16th of May, they discovered the attack was much more extensive than originally understood. The group behind it have accessed a large amount of information relating to legal aid applicants. This sounds like a very significant breach of government information. Do you know anything about this, and do you have a response this morning?
I'm aware of the story. It's obviously that the legal system is not part of my own personal responsibilities, but it is an arm's length agency to the Ministry of Justice which has been affected, and they're closely engaged with our authorities, our cybersecurity authorities. I can't say more than that because of the nature and seriousness of this, but yes, the government is responding to it with all the relevant powers and authorities you would expect for a serious incident of this kind.
All right, Jonathan Reynolds, thank you. Data may include contact details, addresses of applicants, dates of birth, national ID numbers, criminal history, employment status and financial data. And the Legal Aid Agency urges all members of the public who have applied for legal aid to take steps to safeguard themselves.
We seem to be going through a rash of cyber attacks in this country at the moment, don't we?
It's almost become like a sport to show they can do it, and they show, and government should be protected because their duty is to protect us as a nation in terms of defence of their own, but they've got to protect people's personal information, because what is this data? Legal aid in particular, you're giving away a lot of your information.
Very confidential stuff.
Very private stuff.
At one time, to steal your data, somebody would have to break into an office and open the filing cabinet.
Watergate.
Yeah, but not now, because of course we're all online. It's the future. Most of us quite enjoy it. It's also very convenient, but it also makes you vulnerable. And every organisation that has your data is under a legal duty to protect it. Now, Marks and Spencers have been losing something like £1 million a day from the cyber attack they had. This is worrying when it's your criminal record. If you've got a criminal record, it might be spent. It might be in things you did in your youth, in the past. And
or you might have been innocent from the word go, and you need legal aid to prove it.
Yeah, and it could be publicised. My biggest fear is always medical records.
But also,
somebody's medical history will all be online now, and somebody gets it and then publicises it.
Or field day for blackmailers. That's the point, isn't it? A field day for blackmailers.
Well, that's what it is.
Government organisations responding to blackmail, we don't know.
Well, there's a duty not to pay out when it's a government organisation. Private companies will have their own policies, of course.
And we won't know if they're paying.
No. Let's talk about Brexit. Jonathan Reynolds says, why would you have any problems with British sausages now being
Didn't want to talk about
sold
fishermen,
abroad?
though, did he?
No,
Did not want to talk about fishing rights at all. He just kept moving away from it because the fishermen and women are being sold out.
The fisher people.
The fisher people.
Actually, if they're being sold out, it was Boris Johnson who sold them out, because the briefings are to rollover deal another 12 years. It was due for review.
Why wouldn't he talk about it? Why wouldn't he talk about it? Why wouldn't he answer British questions?
That's about fishing rights, where our trawler people, fisher folk, can go, where, say, the French can come into our waters. Of course, they were sold down the river by Brexit because so much of the fish they catch is exported, and all of a sudden it became incredibly expensive and bureaucratic and lots of red tape to export.
And last week we had the Prime Minister talking about people, strangers in a foreign island. We're going to cut immigration, and now we're bringing in free movement for people between 18 to 30. If it was 18 to 23, you might get it.
I think you'll find he explained it
Kevin,
isn't free movement.
Actually.
Yeah, but you're talking rubbish.
Of course he's saying that. Well, you do that all the time. You're an art form for you, mate. It is free movement. It's free movement for all 18 to 30-year-olds.
Well, he was not all.
And was there a cap? Is there a limit? He didn't tell us.
Well, he was unwilling to talk about that in detail. He was unwilling to talk about, as you say, fishing rights, UK fishing rights. When we get the details, so I wanted to know when we're going to hear the actual detail of the deal. He says later today. Then perhaps we can start to pick it apart.
Yeah, but it's not free movement for all the 18 to 30-year-olds, whatever you were claiming. It's a reciprocal arrangement, and it's got to be arranged.
He seemed to suggest that we would have more young people going than people coming in.
Yeah, well, you could see there's more people live in the European Union than the UK, but you've got more choice from the UK to go around European Union countries.
There's 27 countries against us.
When you go on holiday...
Don't you think it's interesting that that is a bit like last week in the Island of Strangers comment, suddenly unleashed massive division. And this morning, again, the talking about Brexit, it releases this huge amount of division. So we've got viewers getting in touch to say disgraceful, betrayal, rejoining the EU in disguise, surrender terms, traitorous sellout, treason, biggest betrayal of democracy ever.
Yeah.
It feels like we've gone back almost 10 years.
Absolutely.
And then not one of them has read the agreement.
And we've done a trade deal with the United States and a trade deal with India, which the Prime Minister was bragging about, and good luck to him for getting them done. Because we left Brexit. Because we left the European Union. Because we left the European Union. We couldn't have done those deals if we were still in the EU.
If you can get a better trade deal with India, which I think is about 2% of our trade, the one with the US is really trying to undo some of the worst of Trump. We're not going to be in a better position than we were 6 months ago. But if you're going to do better deals with the US and India, why won't you do a better deal with 27 countries on your doorstep who you have 50%
will do what they've always
with?
done. They'll push us around.
Look, you're a morning mini.
Like they always do.
When we go on holiday, I hope you...
27 against 1. Here we go again. 27 against 1 all over
my passport, like everybody else,
now, Kevin,
to get through
for a long time.
I hope you go to the back of the longest queue and wait for the rest of us to
I'd
go
like
through.
to be on a holiday with both of you. I bet you get on quite well at iron that out.
The juvenile nature of the
I've seen him in his budgie smugglers. You wouldn't want to be on holiday with us.
Let's finish on Gary Lineker.
Juvenile. That's what he is, juvenile.
Not much division amongst our viewers here on Gary Lineker's early bath from the BBC. Messages like, should have been sacked years ago, never mind given a chance to resign, bye-bye Gary, don't let the door hit you on the way out. A couple of people saying they're going to miss him, he was a good commentator, but overall, it's broadly welcomed.
Yeah, of course, he should have gone before.
But he was hugely popular,
tolerated.
And he was top of his game for a long time.
And finally, compensation. You have the 4 members of the Post Office choir and the business secretary, and still they can't say that they're going to pay it all out.
Get it done, Minister.
Yeah.
Get it done. By the way, we've fled to those choir members. I'm going to vote for them.
Yeah, I'll vote for them.
Week on Saturday.
But actually, even if you took them away from the post office, they're pretty good.